So I am a climate scientist, and I specifically study what will happen in the future depending on the choices we make. And I know because of that, that the choices we make, our decisions, are the biggest source of uncertainty in the future. So first of all, I shared with all the heads of state who were there and the heads of delegation, because what they were doing today at the United Nations is they were announcing what's called their NDCs, which is nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement.
As opposed to the SDGs.
Right, which are Sustainable Development Goals. Nobody loves acronyms like NGOs and scientists.
NGOs in the UN.
Yeah, exactly. So all of these countries were basically announcing after my talk how much more they would be reducing their emissions. And as a scientist, I wanted them to know, and I want you to know this too, because this is very important, that literally every action we do matters. Every bit of warming we avoid matters. We talk about the 1.5 degree target, but it's not a magic threshold. If we hit 1.4, there's already people suffering. In fact, there's already people suffering today. If we hit 1.6, it's not all over. 1.6 is better than 1.7. 1.7 is better than 1.8. Every little bit of warming we avoid matters. Every year matters and every choice matters. And so the weight of making those decisions right now is very powerful. It's not too late to avoid the worst impacts. But if we do nothing, they're guaranteed.
So one of the things we've talked about and you've talked about as a scientist, that one of the forces we're fighting is just pure misinformation. Can you talk a little bit about what is happening and how we can combat that?
Absolutely. So I'm on social media, and that means that I see misinformation every day, every hour, sometimes even every minute. Depends how often I'm willing to look.
And it's probably doing that on purpose.
Yes, it is.
It's doing it on purpose, just for you.
No, I don't think it is.
Not just for you.
It's for anybody who posts accurate information online. So I often hear what I think of as many different flavors of denial. And the flavors of denial might sound different. It's not happening. It's not humans. It's not bad. It's too late even as a form of denial. But what they all have in common is they are all preventing action. That's what they all have in common. And so the flip side of that, my colleagues at Yale University have identified 6 truths that everybody needs to know to act on climate. The first 6 key truths we need to know are, yes, climate is changing. Yes, we have checked, and humans are responsible for what? All of the warming and then some. Now, that might sound kind of crazy. How can we be responsible for all and then some? It's because according to natural factors, we should be getting cooler right now. According to the sun and volcanoes and natural cycles, we should be very gradually cooling, but instead we're warming faster and faster.
And this is what you hear. Deniers will say, well, no, the Earth goes through natural cycles. There are times it's warmer, there's times it's cooler. This is true.
It is absolutely true. And how do they know? It's because scientists told them so.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And then it is true, but then the next question that they don't ask is, where are we on those cycles? And where we are on those cycles is we peaked about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, and we were getting cooler until 200 years ago when we abruptly started to warm. But there's also another form of denial that says, sure, it's real and it's happening, but it's not that bad. I mean, warmer is better, carbon is plant food, bring it on. And I'm from Canada, so I have some sympathy with that perspective. Only in the winter.
Toronto might get better, might be more comfortable.
Less snow, nicer winters. But the reality is it's very bad. And in fact, it's very bad for Canada and the US. I mean, a year ago at Climate Week, there was massive flooding. Right now, it's unseasonably warm. We're already seeing heat deaths increase. We're seeing economic impacts skyrocket. We're seeing billion-dollar weather and climate disasters that used to happen once every 4 months in the 1980s. They're happening every 2 weeks now. So these are the first 3 things you need to know, but it's not enough just to know these, because if you know these, you're worried, right? Like, this sounds bad, right?
Mm-hmm. Everybody in this room knows those.
Right, but that's not enough. There's 3 more things you need to catalyze action. For people to actually act and not just be paralyzed with worry, we have to know that experts agree, that other people care. Now, I want you to make a guess in your head. And actually, Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot and make you actually guess this, okay?
I'm supposed to ask the questions.
I know.
That is the deal.
It's late in the day.
It is.
We're going to turn it around. So I want you to guess in your head, too, what percentage of people in the United States do you think are worried about climate change in the US? What percentage? Dan, go ahead. What percentage do you think are worried?
We may have an advantage because we've been here all day, and I think we heard this number
Oh,
earlier.
good. Okay. Well, then tell me.
I'm going to go with 60%.
Almost.
65.
68. Yes. That's good. I mean, depending on what year you ask.
I think we heard it was 60% in, was it Alabama or Mississippi?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But most people don't know. If you ask most people how many people care, they think nobody cares except them. And if you don't think anybody else cares, you're not going to do anything about it. So that's why others care is a key truth. And then there's one more truth, and this truth is shortened as there is hope. But what does that actually mean if you unpack it? What hope means is, if I do something, will it make a difference? And most people think the answer is no. But in reality, if we realize the power of our voices, that's the only way the world has changed before. So we do have that ability, and that's what gives us hope.
We talked about hope, because I asked you in our prep call, are you still an optimist? We know there are headwinds. Keep calling them headwinds. There are terrible problems. We all know what they are. And I asked you, are you still an optimist under these conditions? And you drew the distinction between hope and optimism, and I think it's a useful framework to share.
Okay, so this is my personal definition, and others may disagree. But for me, an optimist is someone who expects things to turn out well, and I actually don't. I figure if you expect things to turn out badly, then you're rarely disappointed, and if you are, you're pleasantly disappointed. But I am relentlessly hopeful, and in fact, I practice hope like a discipline. I go out and I look for hopeful stories. I share them every week in my newsletter, Talking Climate, good news stories on climate and what you can do. And I do that because without hope, if we truly believe we can't make a difference and nothing we do will make a difference, we are doomed.
So you just spent, I don't know, a couple of hours at the UN. You spoke with some people. You presented, and you also listened to people. Did any of those conversations give you hope?
Well, it was really fascinating because I was there, and my colleague Johan Rockström was there to give the scientific basis for why we need NDCs to up their ambition. And then after the Secretary General spoke, countries had the opportunity to come up and speak. And it was fascinating to see which countries were hastening to speak. And they included China, which every year for the last couple of years, China has installed more clean energy in a single year than the US has in its entire history. And they're doing it again and again and again. Last year, the carbon emissions reduced by China's exports outside the country cut global emissions by 1% just by themselves.
Exports of their
clean energy.
Their clean energy technology.
Exactly, clean
Solar
energy
panels.
technology.
Yeah.
Accounting for full life cycle. Like even if they made it with coal, you take that out, you subtract that, and then you look at the rest. Yet their NDCs that they announced were 7 to 10% by 2035. That's not going to get us to where we need to be. And then the European Union came up and they said, we've already cut our emissions by, now, my memory's not perfect, so don't quote me on this. I'm just going to sort of give you a number, but look it up afterwards. Something like 40%. And then they've got massive goals to eventually reach net zero by 2050. And then after them, we had the two countries who are competing to host the next big climate meeting next year, Turkey and Australia. And then after that, we had the Small Island State Alliance. All the small islands that have done almost nothing. In fact, the man who was speaking was from, I think, Vanuatu, and he said their ecosystems absorb 6 times the carbon of their emissions, yet they are still reducing their emissions, even though they account for this much of global emissions, because it is their very lives that are at stake. And the underlying theme through almost every talk was that we cannot do this alone, but we can, and we have to do it together.
Yeah, I don't know that. There we go. There we go. I knew it would come. So doing it together, the people in this room and the people that are going to be watching the recording afterwards, they want to do something. What can they do that will make a difference?
Well, first of all, doing something is what engenders hope. If you're looking for hope, go out and do something, and hope will find you. If we sit there scrolling on our phones, I guarantee it will not. Research has actually shown that bad news about the polar bears starving, or about the ice sheets melting, or about the ocean circulation slowing down. Bad news gets a lot more clicks and shares on social media, but it is the worst at making people want to act. In fact, it paralyzes us. So if you want to do something, here's what the science says are the most effective things you can do. And now I bet you think I'm going to talk about plant-based burgers or solar panels or EVs, and I'm not. According to the science, in the words of Bill McKibben, the most important thing an individual can do is not be such an individual. The biggest impact you can have is, first of all, by using your voice to have a conversation about what I think of as the heart and the hands. We have so much in the head about the ice sheets, the polar bears, the ocean circulation. That's not what we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about what matters to me. My home insurance went up 50% last year because of the extreme events in Texas. My kid had problem breathing because of the wildfire smoke in the air or the pollution from asthma. Our sporting event got changed or canceled, and actually we were just talking backstage about the extreme impact of heat on Formula One racing, for example. So talk about the heart and talk about the hands. What are solutions that are already happening that you might be doing and somebody else could? That a school or a city or a business or an organization is doing that others could too. So then join a climate action group to magnify your voice, then have conversations where you work, then look at where you put your money. Is it being invested in fossil fuels or not? And then take personal action in your personal life with what you eat or how you travel or how you get your energy, but then make it contagious by talking about it. That is how society changes. It begins with every single one of us with our voice.
I think this is a great point. And actually, there was a speech yesterday at the UN in which climate change was attacked directly and aggressively. But I think there's actually a point to be made there, which is that climate change is an abstract concept. It's a number on a thermometer that we don't have any human relationship to. It makes us feel a little bit better, a little bit worse. Either way, 1.5 degrees doesn't seem like a whole lot. It's an abstract intellectual concept, whereas your child being able to having their soccer practice canceled because of wildfires in Canada, not to put too much blame on you.
Because of emissions from the US.
Oh, fair. Probably fair. But that's something we deal with on the East Coast now annually. It's the last 2 years in a row. That never happened here 10 years ago. But making that argument is an argument that is not about climate change. It's about quality of life. And you've talked a lot about, in your newsletters, a lot about how this is affecting not just the thermometer, but also our quality of life, our communities, our businesses, our health. Can you talk a little bit about making that argument and how you see that as really the thing that's actually going to make real change?
Absolutely. So for over a century, we scientists have been tracking global average temperature, global average sea level. We've been tracking the mass balance of the ice sheets. We've been tracking all these sort of abstract concepts that I think of as the head. And we've been sharing it with people. So most people now know it's real, it's us, it's bad, and most people are worried. But out of the 68 who are worried, do you know what percent are activated in the US? 8. So do the math here. I know Dan might have promised you no math, but...
Just for me.
Just for him. That's 60%. 60% of people in the US are worried, but they're not activated because they don't know what to do and they don't understand how it matters to their life. So that's why I have my newsletter Talking Climate, and literally every week I share information about how climate change is affecting the availability and the price of matcha tea. That's big now. My son is one of the biggest consumers. Or how it's affecting in vitro fertilization rates. If you're exposed to heat and pollution, your chance of succeeding drops by 20%, and that is a painful, invasive, expensive process that you want every chance of success for. I talk about how climate change disproportionately affects senior citizens, or how it's affecting Japanese rice crops, or how it's coming for your home insurance rates. And I'm not speaking figuratively when I tell you that my own home insurance rates went up. So making that head-to-heart connection is absolutely key, but then you also have to make the heart-to-hands connection. What can you do? And when it comes to what to do, there's so many amazing examples of people doing incredible things, but what they all have in common is they begin with somebody literally opening their mouth and having a conversation, which we are not doing. The data shows that only 1/3 of the people around the US even talk about it once in a while. So it might feel a little scary, But you don't have to be a scientist. You just have to say something like you just said, like, wow, that wildfire smoke, we never used to have that. Or what I often do is I ask people, do you feel like the weather's getting weirder? And I have not had a single person say no. And so a couple months ago, I was in Austin, Texas. I live in Dallas myself. And I was sharing with a group of people about this number, how I often ask Uber drivers, do you feel like the weather's getting weirder? And the Uber drivers always have lots to tell me about how the weather is getting weirder. Flood, heat, more. So then I left and I got in an Uber, and literally I opened the door and I was just getting in the car, and the Uber driver said to me, wow, the weather is really getting weirder. And I was like, hey, that's my line.
It's because it's in your profile. It's
Yeah,
in your Uber
right,
profile. I know all about
is.
it.
She always wants to talk about how the weather's weirder.
We'll talk to the driver, and this will be her first question.
Right.
So let me ask you personally, because you, as you say, you are on social media. You're more on social media certainly than I, and yet you seem semi-immune to the corrosive effects. You still seem hopeful and sound optimistic, even if you aren't underneath. Like, what is your social media hygiene? How do you control the flow of information? How do you maintain sanity when the algorithm is undoubtedly trying to convert you?
Well, unfortunately, it is. I was one of the early Twitter adopters. I was on Twitter, I think, since 2009. I remember my colleague Jeff told me to join, and I joined, and I'm like, what is this? What do you do here? And then it didn't take too long to figure out what you do. It's awesome. At least it was. Unfortunately, when Twitter got bought, I immediately noticed that the algorithm changed and that trolling increased. And then when it got changed into X, the trolling I received, which was already fairly bad, it increased by a factor of 10 to 15 times, not percent. So for every 100 hate-filled messages I used to get, I would get between 1,000 and 1,500 of them. So not only did I take X off my phone, because having it on your phone, tempts you to see it, I've actually gotten to the point where I only go to X very specifically about once a week or two, and I just basically post my newsletter there. I spend a lot more time on Blue Sky, which does not have an algorithm. I was posting equally on Threads and Blue Sky. Threads is the new microblogging spot that Meta started. And my two accounts were increasing at exactly the same rate with exactly the same interactivity until the US election. Blue Sky continued to take off exponentially. Threads froze and dropped. So the algorithms are actually literally programmed. I have the data and the receipts to downweight voices that are sharing correct information on climate change. And that means it's an uphill battle. Like you said, headwinds, it's very uphill. But I'm going to keep doing it because these are tools that can reach people. But you can't get bogged down in arguing with people. So if anybody follows me, and you probably know Dan, I don't argue with people on social media. I'll give them the facts if they didn't call me a name. And if they don't accept the facts, I just block and move on. Because I know that there's a small fraction of people who are dismissive, who you can't change their mind. And in fact, it's even worse. Arguing with them feeds them. They love it. That's why they're there. And I'm not there to feed them. So I block them and I move on, because most of the other people want information about how we know it's real, it's us, it's bad, experts agree, but others care. And what's the last one? There is hope.
I believe it goes back to that, don't feed the trolls. It's been true. It was true on every level of the internet. It's true today. Thank you for feeding our souls and giving us great information and true information. I love everything that you do. Thanks so much for coming and joining us today. Let's give her a big round of applause.